Good evening, everyone. I can't turn around far enough to see all of you all. Thank you for coming down and joining me. A family member asked me to record this, so I appreciate an audience being here. You'll notice at the bottom of your program my favorite musical saying that God gives us music to wash from our souls the dust of everyday life. And so I hope that these next 45 minutes will do that for each of us. And thank you for joining my musical moments. First thing I'm going to play today, first of all, on the back of your program, you'll notice some musical facts that I think are interesting. And most of you may well know these already, but the periods of music that are most often performed today, I'm going to be playing two pieces from the classical, two from the romantic, and two from the impressionistic period. The ones from the classical are in the sonata form, which is a very stylized writing. The first movement of a sonata, most often there are 3 or 4 movement pieces. I am only playing the first movement of the sonatina and the first movement of a sonata today. But it will have an exposition which exposes y'all to the melody, and a main and a secondary theme, and the secondary theme changes keys. And then there's a development that takes part of the main theme and develops it, and then there's a recapitulation that recaps that main and secondary theme but keeps them in the same key. So, and I'm going to play a piece by Muzio Clementi, an Italian composer who lived most of his life actually in London. His life really outlines the classical period, and he was called the father of the pianoforte. He was a composer and a performer and a teacher and a manufacturer of pianos. And he wrote more sonatas than Haydn or Mozart or Beethoven by a long shot, because he lived 80 years, whereas they had much shorter lives. This Opus 36 of Clementi's are a set of 6 sonatinas, opus of course meaning the published work. So this is number 4 of this Opus 36 sonatina in F major by Muzio Clementi. maybe dramatic. I like Clementi's music because he's happy. I find Clementi very happy to play. This is also a very pleasant piece, composed in 1778, and it is sonata. Mozart's cataloged differently. There's a Scherkel number 332. This is an F major. by John Field. I don't know that many of you will be familiar with him. He was an Irish composer. His family moved to London when he was 10 so that he could study with Clementi, which I thought was interesting. Yeah. And Clementi did develop him into a concert pianist. And then in later years, Field moved to St. Petersburg and for some years sold Clementi pianos in St. Petersburg, so there was quite a relationship there. Field is credited with developing the genre of nocturne. Now, nocturne simply means night music. And it has some very specific things. I'm thinking that Field actually, because let's say that he perhaps developed this to show off the abilities of the pianoforte, because at the time it was invented, it was the only instrument that you could play forte and piano on the same keyboard at the same time. And so the nocturne comes in layers. And it's like at night, I'm sure down here in the South, y'all have heard a mockingbird sing. Maybe you wake up at 2 in the morning. And it just sings out over everything. The melody in a nocturne sings out over everything. And then there's a bass note. It's like the ground. It supports everything, the tree and the bird's sitting in. And then everything else, all the harmonies and the intricacies in between, are just in the background, like the moonlight and the smell of the dew and the breeze blowing. And so you've got 3 different layers in a nocturne of sound. So this is a nocturne by John Field. Frédéric Chopin, of course, is one of the better-known Romantic composers. He lived between 1810 and 1849, and in that short 39 years, wrote over 230 pieces of music that are still played in the concert halls today. Very popular Romantic composer. This nocturne is much more dramatic than the one you just heard. next two that I'm going to play are written by Claude Debussy. He's credited along with Maurice Ravel in developing the Impressionistic period. They use several non-traditional scales and tone structures. And Debussy wrote this children's corner, it's a set of 6 pieces, in 1908 for his daughter Emma. I think she was about 3 at the time. It was to be played for her, not by her. And it was for her entertainment and to explore music from a child's viewpoint. And the pieces are based on her toys. So this first one is Jimbo's Lullaby, has the subtitle Berceuse des Elephants. Berceuse in French comes from the French verb bercer, to rock. So it's a lullaby with a rocking motion in it. And then the last thing I'm going to play today is Gollywog Cakewalk. This is a fairly familiar piece. A gollywog was a black rag doll, and a cakewalk is a syncopated march-like piece that was actually performed by black slaves in parody of the behavior of their white masters. So Debussy is poking fun at a lot of people in this piece. Also, Richard Wagner was a very famous romantic composer of operas. Debussy was not a fan. Wagner, one of his most famous, Tristan and Isolde, was first performed in 1865, and it's a monumental piece that runs almost 5 hours long. So Debussy was much into shorter forms. But in Tristan and Isolde, the main melody is which you may have heard. In this piece, Debussy goes and I just think that's funny as it can be. The other thing that I have on the back of your page is about the piano pedals, because this one uses the middle pedal on the piano. Not too many pieces do. Of course, the right-hand pedal is the damper pedal. It holds the dampers up, and anything you play reverberates until you take your foot off the pedal, and the dampers fall down on the strings and dampen the sound. The left pedal is the soft pedal. And as you have seen as I've used it, it moves the whole keyboard to the right. So now your hammer is coming up, and instead of hitting the 3 strings where it always does, and which hardens the felt in that area, it moves over and it hits on softer felt. So that changes the tone quality. And he also hits 2 strings instead of 3, so it makes it softer. And then the middle pedal, or the sostenuto pedal, the sustaining pedal, sustains a long note or chord. For instance, let's see. Where am I? Yes. Now he wants that sustained, but he does not want that sustained. It's staccato. Sounds different if I did it with the damper pedal. It just doesn't have the same quality to it. So with the he gets the mood that he wants in that particular measure. So that's what the middle pedal of the piano is for. Anyway, Gollywog Cakewalk.